Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today we're talking about Marvel Avengers. This game is quite despised in the gaming community, mostly because of its blatant attempt at being a live service game, but we'll get into all that in just a little bit. Let me set up the whole concept of Marvel Avengers. At its core, it's a third-person action RPG. The main idea is you pick your favorite Marvel superhero and then you level them up and get different gear for them, and you are doing missions in order to increase said power level and gear. I picked this game up for super cheap. I think I got it for $5 at GameStop, probably because of its infamous reputation. And while this game does want itself to be a live service game, I approached it more with a single player mindset. So I'm going to talk about the single player campaign, and then we will transition over to the live service aspects of it, because the live service aspects certainly do bleed into the single player campaign, and it doesn't feel great. Now, the single player campaign is supposed to be a venue in which you learn how to play, and then the idea is after you play through the single player campaign, then you hop into that live service, and the idea is you are going to be continuously playing forever. The campaign starts with Kamala Khan. This is Miss Marvel before she gets her superpowers. I think this game came out before her TV show and movie, and there is a vast difference between her in the game and her in the MCU. That's something to be said about most of the superheroes in this game. They aren't directly like the MCU heroes, especially in terms of appearance, and so it might be a little jarring at first if you are only focused on the MCU and you don't play any of the games or read any of the comic books. The characters might look a little weird, like Iron Man does not look like Robert Downey Jr., the Hulk does not look like Mark Ruffalo, and so it does take some getting used to, but it's not bad. Like, as far as visuals go, I don't think anything is too terrible. I actually like the character models themselves, and like most live service games, there's actually something to be said about the amount of customization that you can do in terms of like your character's costumes. So the game starts with Kamala Khan. She's on a plane with her father. She is a huge fangirl about all the Avengers, and she submitted a fan fiction as part of a contest, and she was one of the contestants that was selected to go to the convention. And so when she goes there, the Avengers are showing off this new power source. Unfortunately, something goes wrong. This new power source explodes, and it creates huge destruction across the land, and it kills tons of people. It gives other people superpowers, which are then called Inhuman, and then we skip forward about 5 years into the future. The Avengers have all broken up because of this A-Day event, and it kind of becomes similar to Watchmen, where superheroes are now kind of despised and working under the table. Kamala Khan never gave up her fangirlism, however, and she actually became one of those Inhumans. Now, her powers are not directly like how they are in the TV show and the movie. Instead, she has powers more similar to Mr. Fantastic from Fantastic Four, where she can really stretch her body and limbs, make her fists like super huge. And so it's kind of like the TV show and movie, but in the MCU version of her, she can more like bend light to her will, and so she just creates giant fists and limbs out of light and platforms. I kind of like the MCU version as far as the powers go for her, and I'm not sure which one is more accurate to the comic books, but I definitely like her as a character in both the MCU and this video game. She just is so full of hope and enthusiasm. Whenever she encounters a new superhero, she's always so ecstatic about it, similar to how I am, because I am a big fan of the MCU even to this day. And so it is cool when they do like the big Thor reveal or show off the Iron Man. So one day she's doing some sleuthing online. She comes across some evidence that Captain America was murdered, and so now she's kind of going on a quest to Utah, because that's where the last S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters was, in order to try and get the Avengers back together. For most of this campaign, you probably will be playing as Kamala Khan. She is your only available hero for maybe like a fourth of the game, I would say, and then you encounter the Hulk, and you can choose between her or the Hulk, and then you encounter a new hero, and you can there's times when you can choose which hero you want to play play as, and other times you are required to play as a certain hero. And I think that's where the single player campaign starts showing its faults in terms of trying to become a live service game and trying to transition you into that live service mentality. Because the problem with this game is they are trying to force this game to be a live service RPG where each hero has their own stats, has their own power levels, has their own gear, has their own skill tree. And normally I love these kind of RPG mechanics in a video game, but it doesn't really work with the superheroes, especially when sometimes you're given the choice which hero you want to play as, and other times you are required to play as a hero. Because sometimes when you're required to play as a specific hero that you haven't leveled up very much and their power level isn't very high, they're going to feel significantly weaker. For instance, I often neglected playing as Hulk because I would rather play as other superheroes. So at the end of the game, there is a segment where I'm required to play as Hulk, and I just feel so weak. And the problem is the animations and the feeling of the superhero don't match the numbers that are showing up when you punch a bad guy. Like Hulk, he's strong, he should feel invincible, but I was just dying over and over again because my numbers just weren't high enough. And so I do like the idea of constantly switching between heroes and going through areas that are specifically tailored for said superhero. I like those sections, but the RPG mechanics bring it down because it doesn't make it feel as tailored for that superhero. I think the examples that I really enjoyed about this game are the very first level and the very last level, because during the whole A-Day explosion, you are constantly cycling between these superheroes, and it's like they tailored this particular segment for Iron Man. Like, so there's a segment when you're flying through all the different robots and stuff as Iron Man, shooting your missiles and stuff. It felt awesome. Or other times you're playing as a Hulk and the whole bridge is crumbling and you're like jumping and doing all this platforming. Or Captain America, he can like run along walls and things like that. And so those specific times are awesome because you're playing through all these segments that are specifically tailored for each individual hero. That's not the majority of this game though. The majority of this game becomes mission-based, where you select the level. The idea is it's kind of tailored around multiplayer. They really want you to invite your friends to come play. You get to choose which hero you play as. On the surface, that wouldn't be such a big deal, but these mission-based levels where you get to choose your hero aren't specifically structured for any specific hero. They're just kind of like open. There's a bunch of odds and ends that you can do. You can go find gear, or you can do objectives to try and level up, but it's never like specifically tailored to each individual hero's strength, if that makes sense. The campaign allows you to play, I think it's 6 different superheroes. Most of the main first ones that we got with the MCU, besides Hawkeye, I think Hawkeye was replaced by Kamala Khan. Whenever I did get the choice to play as a superhero, I often opted for Iron Man just because I liked his playability. I like that he can fly in the air. I really focus his skills to be focused around his lasers that do progressively more damage as you are aiming them at an enemy. I don't know, it just felt more fun to navigate through these open areas when I could fly as Iron Man compared to just jumping over and over again as someone like Hulk or Miss Marvel. And to be honest, I typically just went for the main objectives as far as the single player campaign went. I didn't feel like doing all this side content because there are a ton of like individual missions that you can do if you just want to kind of like mess around. I think each of the heroes has their own individual quest line, for lack of a better term, which probably unlocks like a unique costume for them or something, or a unique banner. Each mission has a recommended power level that you should be when you go into the mission, and I never felt like I was too under-leveled in terms of the recommended power level. The only time that I did feel like I maybe should have gone back and done some side content to level up is the very last level, when they require you to play as certain heroes that I have neglected throughout the campaign, and now they are severely underleveled. If you are having trouble with the difficulty though, they totally allow you to just set this game's difficulty from normal to easy if you want, and you just don't want to be bothered with doing any kind of grinding or trying to level up your power level. They do the thing where you have the central hub, and this is where you can choose what mission you want to go into. This is where you can spend resources to get new gear to try and get a better power level. They have training where you can play as all the different heroes and see how they control. As far as like combat-wise goes, the humans are all kind of similar, but with their own distinctions, which is, I think, is good. Like, I should generally know how to play each hero, but they should each have their own strengths and weaknesses. They all have like their little basic attack, then they have a super strong attack, and then they have 3 different abilities, including like a super strong hero ability. And I actually do think that the single player campaign did a good job showcasing each of the individual heroes that you can play as, just so you can get like a feel for them and see if they're the type of hero that you want to invest more time in leveling up. As far as enemies that you'll be facing, the main antagonist in this game is a company called AIM, and they are the ones who pretty much acquired all of the resources that the Avengers had when the Avengers split up. This is ran by a woman named Monica and a man named Tarleton, and if you don't recognize that name, Tarleton, you will notice that his head is getting progressively larger and larger, and yeah, eventually he does become the supervillain MODOK, who is kind of a joke. He was especially a punching bag in the latest Ant-Man movie. I don't know, I never really got behind the whole MODOK supervillain. I can't take him very seriously. But yeah, for the most part, you will be fighting these AIM robots. Now, there's variations in terms of like what kind of robots you'll be facing. Some will have guns, others will have like electric swords or giant shields, and so you do have to kind of pay attention how you navigate through combat. It's not just endless punching over and over again. You do have to be kind of smart about it. Some enemies require you to like fire missiles at a range, or they're like flying up in the air. A lot of the heroes have the ability to dodge attacks or block attacks, and then you can kind of do like this counter attack. You have to be pretty quick on this though. It's not as brainless as something like maybe the Arkham games. The campaign is super short. Took me probably between 8 to 10 hours, I would guess. The main meat of this game essentially comes from the post-game, the whole live service. And when I say the term live service, I'm mostly talking about a game that wants to be your only game that you play, and they want you to play it for a long time, with the intention that you spend more on microtransactions. When I'm talking about microtransactions, they want you to spend money to upgrade your power level, or get new costumes, or customize your little banner on your profile, or maybe new characters. They drop a Wakanda bundle pack where you can play as the Black Panther, and surprise, it costs additional money. Like I said, I didn't play any of this post-game content because I don't even have a PlayStation Premium, so I can't play online. But for the $5 that I spent on this game, I thought the single-player game was actually pretty good, despite it trying to do this whole mission-based structured type of game with like the RPG mechanics. I still had a decent time playing through it, just ignoring most of that like power level stuff and that side content, just going through the main campaign. I mean, if you can get this game for $5, I totally recommend it. Yes, it does kind of reek with the whole money-grabbing scheme of the live service, but if you ignore that, then I think you'll actually have a pretty decent time. And obviously, if you can get a buddy to play along with you, I think you'd have all the more fun with it. Overall, I think I'm gonna give this game a 3 out of 5. I'd probably feel a little more sour about the game if I had spent more money on it, but as far as the single player campaign goes, yeah, I'd say go for it. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Marvel Avengers, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!